Hey, family, it's your sister Jocelyn here, and welcome to another episode of Faith on the Journey. So glad to have you here. I'm here with my sister, my sister in ministry, I'll say, who's doing some amazing things for the kingdom of God, Reverend Dr. Naomi Mitchell. She is actually a licensed minister. She has a heart for wholeness, wellness, and well being. She is the co pastor with her husband, Reverend Dr. Joel Mitchell of Morgan Park Baptist Church of Chicago. She also has earned her master's in divinity in pastoral care and counseling from Garrett Theological Seminary. She has her doctorate of ministry in homiletics from the Association of Chicago Theological Schools. And she's the co-founder of an organization called the Marriage Investors, which helps marriages to heal. But what I'm most excited about is she is a member of our counseling team, and she is here to share with you today some gems that will help you to move forward on your healing journey. So welcome, Naomi.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Reverend Jocelyn. God bless you, my sister. Thank you for having me. I am excited as well, not only to be here, but to be a part of the team and the great work that you and your team are doing. And so I'm excited to join with you in the work of God that you are doing in the lives of God's people.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mhm.
And I'm looking forward to this conversation that we're about to get into. So let's talk about it. So tell me the work that you're doing around emotional healing, helping people to know God's love. I'm always curious as to how God has been a healer in your life.
hmm Yeah, I am really dedicated to the work that I'm doing because I know that people have no idea what it means to be healed emotionally. And I think that people are also unaware of how not being healed emotionally impacts their entire life, right? Like their relationships with with themselves first and then with others, the extension of how it impacts their relationship with others. And so for me, my experience, is multiple. My mother died when I was 18 months. Ended up living with my mother's sister, my grandmother, and my aunt, who took care of my brothers and sisters and myself. And so that in itself, having my mother die and not know her at a very early age, there was some emotional pain there for me. And not only that, identity is very important as to a young girl, to all of us, really. One of the things I've learned in ministry is that people struggle in three major areas: their relationship with God, their identity, and then their relationship with others, right? And their relationship with God also involves their purpose. What am I here for? And so, me not having my mother, brought a lot of emotional pain to me. And so I had to do the work of some healing. So I had to see my own therapist. I had to do the emotional work to talk about what that looks like in my life, how it has impacted me, how it impacts other relationships. And God was able to heal me through Christian counseling and through just doing the personal work of self acceptance and self affirmation and identity.
That's huge. And it sounds like even though you were able to share that really succinctly, that was a process for you to get to that point.
Oh,
Lots
for
of work,
sure.
lots of tears, I'm sure.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for saying that because it is a process, and oftentimes we want to rush it and we think that we should be in a certain place by a certain time. And my process may not look like your process or anyone else's. And so, yes, it is a process, and I had to learn to be patient with myself and also to not compare. What's that term that says, I think comparison is the thief of joy. And
Mm.
so, if I look at someone else's life in comparison, then I'm not able to enjoy. I think it was Joyce Myers that says, enjoy the journey on the way to where you're going, right? We have to enjoy right now so I can see how God has delivered me in this time and in this space before I'm trying to get to where I know I'm going to be or where I would like to be, but just kind of enjoy the journey.
Right. So important. And I appreciate you sharing that. And I think one of the things that we can often struggle with is trying to rush the journey. So, one of the things that I talk a lot about is how in church, particularly, we like to use Christianese, I call it, those,
Hmm.
sayings like, oh, too blessed to be stressed, or, all the, you've been in church, you know what I'm talking about, like the sayings that kind of suppress how you're feeling. I wrote an article
Hmm.
about this several months back on spiritual bypassing, the idea
Hmm.
that you're just using, spirituality to actually in a toxic way that actually harms you
Absolutely.
versus helps you. And so I want you to talk a little bit about how there's a difference between spiritual bypassing and the actual process of coming to God, believing that God will heal you, but acknowledging those emotions.
That's so vitally important. And I see it so often because we use our spirituality to numb us from the realities of life that impact all of us as human beings, right? And so we tend to say things like, oh, pray about it, or we'll say, you don't have enough faith. You should be here by now, or you're not believing God. So it adds uh, to the impact of what's happening to you in your life, right? Whatever it is hindering you by you not actually facing it, or like you said, using spiritual bypass and quoting the scriptures. Oh, God won't put more on you than you can bear, or you just not strong enough. You don't have enough faith. That adds to the the lack of, or the slowness of the process, because we don't deal with things uh, as they are. And I've seen that so often. And yes, I believe in prayer. I've seen God answer prayer and do some amazing things, but I also know that God uses therapy and God uses therapists and counselors so we can get past those things that have happened to us, or impact us or hurt us or causes us pain. Those are, God uses those. My husband oftentimes say the Ephesians 4 chapter, God has some pastors and evangelists and teachers, and God also has some therapists and counselors as well, until we come into the full measure and the until we can all be healed. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. And sometimes we like to separate in as if it's God or therapy, and you can have both. And so I think
Both.
that's the message that we want people to leave with today. So
Yes.
my next question for you is, I really want to talk about some of the barriers that someone can face when they are trying to move forward in their healing process. What comes to mind?
Yeah, so again, one of the things I think, one of the barriers, like I said, is that we think that we could pray it away. That is so major. And listen, like you said, we can have both Jesus, prayer and therapy and the work, because we still have to do the work ourselves. Um, One of the other barriers is that we are unable to I think the stigma that's associated with therapy, because I think, and I used to say in particularly our community as African Americans, but it's not just us. It is very prevalent in the African American community, the stigma attached to therapy and counseling. But just overall, counseling centers has closed. It's not a priority oftentimes. So the work that you're doing here with Faith on the Journey is so vitally important, because people do not have resources. And so having the right resources, is important. And so it could be a barrier to your healing if you do not have the right people to talk to. But also, if we're not willing to do the work, um, it will go with you. You can carry it with you into all of your relationships: mother, daughter, father, son, sister to sister, brother to brother, romantic relationships, intimate relationships. Those things will carry into every aspect of your life if you're not willing to do the work.
Oh, that's it. That's so important. I think that sometimes people aren't willing to do the work, and they might be scared. They might
Mm-hmm.
just not want to deal with the pain. There's a number of reasons, but we
Absolutely.
we have to, in order to really get to where God is leading us in life and to experience wholeness and true joy,
Yeah.
we need to do the work. And it's
Yeah.
I've been told before by a good friend, you have to feel the pain in order to get better. There's no way
Mm-hmm.
around it, and so just understanding that. But
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I think that you know, being able to see yourself is important as well, because oftentimes we are, when we don't look at ourselves and we bury the pain, and we don't see how the way that we are impacts everything around us, right? That I think is an issue. We can look at other people and see what they're doing, how what they're doing is impacting us or what they're not doing. But then we don't look in the mirror and take do some self-reflection so that we can see, what has happened to us or what we're doing or not doing is impacting everything in our life. And so, it's like when we are naive about who we are, what we do, and how we interact or how we come to the table or how we show up is so vitally important.
yeah, it really is. Now, revisiting the question that we were just talking about concerning barriers to someone's healing, one that comes to mind is toxic environments.
Hmm.
And I wanted to ask you just to share with us what comes to mind when you think of toxic environments, and if someone feels like they're almost stuck in one, what are ways in which they can navigate that so that they can actually move forward in their healing?
Hmm. Well, some of the first thing actually that came to my mind when you said toxic environments is when you're in a space where you're not able to be your authentic self, where you feel as if you are not enough, or when you're always acquiescing to someone else's way of life or way of being. I think that the other thing when I think of toxic environments is a lack of boundaries. When people, one, if you have a lack of boundaries, but two, if you have boundaries and people are always crossing those boundaries, and then you have nothing set up to regulate that, right? I think that becomes a very toxic environment for a person to exist in. um, we oftentimes will allow people to treat us any type of way, to say things, in particularly family and those that we love, because it feels like, just because they're my mother or they're my child or they're even my husband, that they can do certain things and I just take it. And I think that that is problematic, because we need to have boundaries that says the way that I can exist in this relationship uh, is this way. And if these things are, that you continue to ignore my needs, then we're going to have difficulty having any type of relationship. And so that becomes a toxic environment because we have to always be the one to acquiesce or to say, well, that's okay. I understand that's how they are. That no, we have to make sure that we enforce the boundaries in our lives so that we can be free. We can be free to be our authentic self, and that it's okay for us to have these boundaries and this level uh, of resistance, right, to the things that cause us or could cause us harm.
That's important. And I think for someone such as myself who always was taught to be nice, I would confuse being nice and setting a boundary as actually being mean, and I had a
Mm-hmm.
difficult time with that. And so, for someone like me who struggles with that, can you help to reframe how that is in terms of boundaries is not mean?
Yes. Uh, I wrote this article about how it's important for us to reinforce those, because as Christians, of course, being nice and not, like you said, not wanting to appear mean or wanting to, we want to appear Christ-like. I remember I wrote this article and I gave some examples like um, going to a clothing store and seeing a dress in the window, and it's like, oh, I want to go and try on this dress, and I want to see how it looks. Go and try on the dress. I look in the mirror and I say, this isn't me, I don't like it. But you come out and you want to get a broader perspective, and the salesperson says, oh, you look great, that is amazing, I love it on you, and then all of a sudden you take on what they think about it versus what you already know and saw in the mirror yourself, right? And you end up leaving the store with the dress. Next time you try and put it on, it looks the same as when you looked at it yourself, right? So that's one thing, that you don't trust yourself enough to say, this doesn't look good. The other example I gave was, or you didn't want to say no to the salesperson who's really only looking for the sale. The next example I gave was I would go to the restaurant and they would bring me my food, and I asked for my steak medium well. And so, or well done. Well done was how I used to like it. I'm changed a little bit, but well done. And so the chef says, well done isn't the best way to eat a steak. It's not something that it's not appropriate to eat a steak well done. So they bring me my steak back medium, which is their recommendation. And so I would either not eat my steak or just, eat it and, just whatever. And it's not the way I like it. Or I would end up just taking it home, just wrap it up for me. And I wouldn't eat it because I didn't want it like that. But I didn't want to send it back and say the way that I asked for it was this way, right? And so I'm saying all of that to say, they said, well, the chef's recommendation is that you eat it this way. But I'm paying 50 some dollars for for a good steak, and I didn't get it the way that I wanted it, and I wasted my money because I did not want to ruffle any feathers, or I did not want to be looked upon as mean. And the other thing I've learned is people really don't want you to know what you need, know what you like, or even say it. People want to, and this has been my experience, they really want to dictate to you what you should do, what you shouldn't do, what you should. And learning to say no, and learning to say, this is not who I am, and learning to say, this is how I want it is important. And we should show up that way.
Yes. Yes. Thank you for sharing that. Very important. And when it comes to tending to our own emotional needs, sometimes that's been our biggest problem is not having healthy boundaries.
That's
And so
right.
seeing how you can start implementing those in your life is very important. And that kind of leads me into my next question in terms of the process for healing from a deep emotional wound. What are some of the things that you say might be a part of someone's process to move forward?
So I think one is seeking help and support from someone that can help walk you through the journey in a non judgmental space, in a space where you feel comfortable. That's the other thing. It's so vitally important that the support that you receive works for you. And it's okay if it doesn't work for you. You have to find the space, the person that can journey with you that's for you. And that's important for you to say, okay, I think this is a good relationship. I feel safe here. And I can allow this person to journey with me. Not in the space where someone is judging you or trying to make you be something or someone you're not. So that's number one. That's so vitally important. Number two is being able to speak your truth. Again, that's the other piece. So oftentimes we aren't allowed to speak our truth. Now, it may be not your truth, it may be something, but this is my truth so that you can get it out on the table we can take a look at it, and then we can begin to work through it together. But this is my truth, and you should not feel ashamed to share it. You should be able to share it in your time and the way that you share it. That's important as well. The other process is for you being able to accept, recommendations, accept theoretic or therapeutic um, aspects of of different things, so that you can take on these things, do the work, and then come back and apply it, apply it to your life, and then come back and say, well, here's what I tried, this worked or didn't work. Being willing to do the work and being able to see yourself. I think it's also important, on the healing process, again, that you understand that this is your process and it may look different from someone else's. And then I think having the right team to support you is so vitally important as well. So sometimes you need a therapist or a counselor. Sometimes you may need a psychiatrist or a psychologist. You may need medication, different things for your journey, and it's okay.
I think that's huge. The fact that you just said it's okay is something
Yes.
that sometimes people need to hear. It's
Yeah.
okay that you don't have to be strong all the time. You might be in leadership at your workplace. You might be used to being the one that has it all together, but sometimes you need help, and
Yes.
acknowledging that is key. Now, I would love for you to share a couple healing practices that you feel could be useful for someone. We know that everyone's journey looks different, but what are a couple things that you might be able to integrate into your daily life that can help you to work towards your healing?
Yeah, I'm glad that you use that word integration, because we have to be able. The thing is that when something happens to us, whatever type of trauma we've experienced in our lives, whether that is rape, some type of emotional pain, a breakup, a loss, job loss, abuse of any type, we have to understand that we are not the same person once that has happened to us. Because what happens is we try to go back to the way things used to be. And when something happens to us, it changes us, it impacts us greatly. And so the struggle of trying to get back to the way we were before this happened, it causes us our process to be delayed, right? That's another barrier to our healing. And so I think that, one of the things that we have to come to terms with is that I am no longer the same after this has happened to me, and I need to be healed. Now, here's the thing that I think that people fear is that you can be even better once you've healed. And so we try to go back to that person, like that's who I was. This is what, this is, but God is able to make us even better after the breakage or after the breach or after the hurt or the pain or the trauma. We can be an even better person. And so I think that is so, so, so important, because it's like we're trying to hold on to the past, which is no longer the same. But God has a better future for us if we would allow ourselves to go through the healing process, and we would allow ourselves to say, okay, let me release that and move forward. One of the things that the definitions of forgiveness that I love, and I can't recall who said it, but I love it. It's letting go of. Wait, let me think of how it goes. I have to get this right because it's so vitally important. It's giving up the hope for a better past, giving up all hope for a better past. Now, why is that important? Because we live in this place that says, I wish this had not happened. If this had not happened, I would be here. If you didn't do that, I would be this, or I would be here, or I would do that. Well, it did happen. They did do it. You did it. Whatever the case may be, we have to come to terms with that, right? And since that did happen, this is the situation I'm in. And so now I have to move forward with that. And not saying that this thing has to be, you have to carry it around like a dead body. In the Bible used to say, it says things like that we carry this corpse around and we live with it all day. No, we have to do the work so that we can be released from that thing and then we can move forward. Does that make sense?
That makes such good sense. I was over here shouting. That is that ministered to me because I think for one of my biggest struggles was being stuck in the past, in the living in
Hmm.
the shoulda, coulda, wouldas from yesterdays. And that does
Yeah,
keep you stuck. And so I
absolutely.
appreciate that definition. And I know it spoke to others as well. And I know that you do a lot of work with people as it relates to the work of the heart. And so I would love for you to share what are some areas that you specialize in terms of counseling?
Yeah, so one of the things that is huge for me is just transition, right? Oftentimes we can have these transitions in life. So whether that means going from being single to married, whether that means going from being not having children to having children, from not being a mother to being a mother, whether that is going from one job to the next, um, moving from one city to the next, getting a promotion, going away to college, those types of things. Transitions can be difficult, even if they're good, right? And so people think that, we only have to seek help when it's bad. But oftentimes we can become overwhelmed. The scripture talks about being overtaken with blessings. That's a good thing to be overtaken and we want multiple blessings. Come on, God, give it to me. But are you emotionally, mentally ready to actually move into this next space? And so oftentimes, one of the areas I love is helping people make these transitions, whether they're good or whether they're bad. I work with people with anxiety. I work with people with depression. I work with people who have experienced grief and loss, whether that's of a loved one, of a job, of a relationship. So work with folk who have experience or difficulty in those areas. I work with couples in marital issues, or not even just issues, but being married to someone for 20, 30 years, you're not the same person when you married them 20 or 30 years. And so there are changes and adjustments that have to be made. So I work with couples with that. I work with couples who bring a baby home. When you bring a baby home and introduce a baby into a relationship, that changes the dynamics of a relationship. And so people aren't often expected they don't often expect the changes that have to occur in the first in the central relationship, right, primary relationship, when you bring or introduce a baby into the relationship, or not only that, blended families. So I work with couples, I work with husbands and wives individually, and families.
That's great. That's great. I can tell you have a lot of experience working with all different walks of life. And it's very interesting to me, especially because you do work with couples and individuals. I would love your take on this in terms of how individual counseling is very important when you need couples counseling as well. Can you speak
Mhm.
more to kind of how you teach as it relates to that?
Yeah. You know, I said earlier about how important it is to have a good relationship with yourself. Acceptance, self regulation, self knowledge. Those, if you don't have a good relationship with yourself, how do you expect you to have a good relationship with someone else? And so, and not only that, I believe that you teach people how to love you. And so you have to learn, what do I like and what do I not like? What can I live with and what can I not live with? What are negotiables and non-negotiables? And so it's important for your individual self to be healthy, right? Healthy is important. because so oftentimes we have these unhealthy relationships because we go into these relationships broken, and then we bring our two broken selves into a relationship and we have a broken relationship. And so why it's important to have individual counseling and couples counseling as well is so that we bring our whole selves into the relationship, so that we're not saying you complete me. No, baby. You don't complete me. I came into this space complete. And I think we go into these relationships looking for our spouse to fill in this void that only God can fill, and that you should have already done this work, because that is too much for any individual, to expect that for any other individual to do.
That's so true. Good. You preaching to somebody today. And I'm just curious for the work that you're doing. You often see people on the other side of a relationship decoupling, whether it's through divorce or a bad breakup. And the process of healing after that can be really tough. For
Yes.
someone who is in that space right now, what words can you offer them to encourage them?
You know, I am passionate about the work that I do with people who, excuse me, are in, divorce, who are in separation or have gone through a divorce, because oftentimes we, in particularly in the church, we shun those people, right? Not only the people, the person who has gone through the divorce, but then we overlook the children and how it impacts children as well, right? Divorce is not the unforgivable sin. Divorce happens, and sometimes we get into relationships. One, we did not ask God about it going into the relationship, right? Two, if we did, we didn't have the tools or the skills, the relationship skills to maintain. And sometimes divorce may be the best thing for us. And so we shun and we look over these people when we want these people to stay in these relationships, when it's so unhealthy and it's not working. It has not worked, and people stay and, excuse me, and are not living the abundant life God intended for them to live. And so sometimes divorce is necessary. And so what I love doing is walking with people through what we call divorce care. Like, when you marry someone, you become one spiritually. And when you divorce, there is like a tearing away. And that tearing is so very painful that you need healing, not just tearing away of oneself, self image, identity. Who am I after this marriage? What do I, what have I lost? Sometimes we even lose ourselves in relationships because we're so busy trying to be something to someone else that we end up losing ourselves. Our identity has become wife, or our identity has become husband, or our identity has become mother. And we've forgotten who we are as an individual. So we need to do that work again. Who am I? Identity work. That includes even with children and how it impacts the children. Because who am I? Because I am half of my mom and half of my dad. And now that we're no longer together in one house, who am I? Where is my room going to be? I don't I don't know, and so it impacts them emotionally. So the work is great. And so I love walking with individuals and doing the preparation work or the repair work that they have to do after a divorce or separation.
Oh, I appreciate that. And I think you were starting to touch on how the range of emotions that someone goes through. I mean, you have the grief component, depending on the dynamics of the relationship, where you actually realize it was unhealthy. It might have been emotionally abusive or uh, physically or whatever. You knew you had to get out. You still feel grief. You still feel a
Yes,
range of emotions. It might be anger, it might be frustration at yourself. And so I think having someone to walk with you to process all that, because you don't want to go through something like that alone.
absolutely. Right, absolutely. And most people that get divorced, they still love each other. They just don't know how to live with each other.
Mm,
Or they've hurt each other. There's so much pain there, or they're not just, just not compatible, but they, loves, you know, love sometimes is not enough. And people stay because they love each other, and it's like they love each other, but that's all that they have. And so sometimes it's just not enough. And so that is so complicated. And to have someone to journey with you, to help you process it, to get it out of your head, to heal your heart, that's so important to have someone to walk alongside of you.
Yeah, it's vitally important. And that's why we're so excited to have you on the team as a new member of our counseling team. If you all are interested in connecting with Naomi, you can find her on our website at faithonthejourney.org. She'd be happy to connect with you, to walk with you. You can see she's extremely passionate about this work. But
I
before we
am.
let her go, is there any final comments or things that you would like to share with someone who's hurting, someone who's just starting their healing journey, they're feeling low, they're feeling down? Any final remarks that you would share, Naomi?
Yeah, I do want to say, that you are not alone, that there is help available. I think people sometimes want to end their lives, because the pain is so great, or they feel like when I was going through my challenges, I just didn't know who to turn to. And I'm so excited about Faith on the Journey. And that, Reverend Jocelyn has this team of people that are willing to walk with you without judgment, and to support you. And if we can't help you, we will help you find the support that you need. There is help available. And so I just really want people to know that, because sometimes the pain can be so great that we just want to escape and we can only see one way out. But there is help available. So if you're going through anything, just call us and let us kind of help you walk through it and help you find the support that you need with one of the counselors here. And if that doesn't work, then we'll help you find the help that you need.
Amen. I couldn't have said it better myself. That's why you're on this team. I'm so grateful for you. I'm so excited to work next to you in this work of healing. Is a calling on both of our lives, and it's so important. And as she said, we are here to support you, to walk alongside of you, so you never have to feel alone. As a part of our
Yes.
core values, we believe in faith, healing, and community. We heal in community, y'all. And so we're here to
Yes.
support you. And if you're interested in learning more about our counseling team, again, you can find that at faithonthejourney.org. Or you can also find out about our healing groups. We run trauma healing groups throughout the year. Essentially, those are small group Bible studies that help you to process and heal from your grief and trauma. So these resources and so much more are available at faithonthejourney.org. Tune in next week and you keep your faith on the journey. I'll see you soon.